The reality you live today wasn't shaped solely by your actions. It was silently molded by everything you sustained within yourself while observing. Unspoken thoughts, unexpressed emotions, glances filled with fear, desire, doubt, or hope. Have you ever stopped to consider that the world around you is not an objective reflection, but a subtle response to the quality of your observation? From an early age, we're taught that the world is a fixed structure that exists out there, independent of our presence, as if reality were a stage play you simply watch without influencing the script. But what if that idea is just an illusion? The truth is much more powerful. Your consciousness is constantly shaping what you call reality, not through physical effort, but through vibration, through the way you look, feel, and direct your attention. To observe is not merely to perceive, it is to interact with the invisible field that connects everything. It is to send silent commands to the universe. It is to inform reality of what should become stronger, more present, more real. Today you'll understand why the way you observe, with what emotion, what intention, what frequency, completely changes how life responds. This isn't just knowledge, it's a portal, because when you shift your observation, everything around you begins to reorganize, and that begins now. The illusion that reality is external and independent. Since birth, we've been conditioned to believe there is an external world, fixed, separate from us, a world that simply exists, moving, happening, regardless of our presence. We're taught to see ourselves as passive observers, almost like tourists of our own lives. We look at the sky, the streets, other people, as if watching a movie where nothing we feel has any influence on the plot. But this perception, however common, is one of the greatest illusions of the human experience. The truth is that nothing you perceive is neutral. Reality, no matter how solid it may seem, doesn't present itself as a finished structure, but as a field of possibilities that only fully manifests when it is observed, and even more so when it is observed consciously. The way you perceive something changes what that something becomes for you. The world is not an objective stage. It is a vibrational mirror. Everything you call reality is, in truth, an experience translated by your consciousness. And consciousness is not a clean window. It is a filter shaped by your beliefs, traumas, hopes, memories, and emotional frequencies. You don't see things as they are. You see them as you are while observing them. A simple example: two people experience the exact same scenario. A quiet moment at home, no messages, no invitations, no external movement. One sees it as abandonment, loneliness, emptiness. The other sees it as peace, an invitation to inner stillness, as freedom. Practically speaking, reality is the same, but their internal experience and what it creates in the hours or days that follow is radically different. This happens because reality is not made of events alone. It's made of the energetic reading of those events. Each gaze, each interpretation carries a vibration, and that vibration shapes the field around you. When you look at the world with fear, the field contracts. When you observe with presence, it opens. When you perceive through gratitude, it expands in return. Quantum physics, though still misunderstood by many, already offers clear clues about this. The famous double-slit experiment revealed that particles behave differently when they are being observed. In other words, the act of observing alters reality. The observer's consciousness directly interferes with the outcome. This is not spiritual philosophy. It's observable science. But what does this mean for your practical life? It means your reality is not a fixed destiny waiting to be lived. It is a sensitive, malleable flow that constantly responds to how you are observing it. As long as you believe everything is just happening to you, you'll keep reacting and reinforcing old patterns. But the moment you realize you're co-creating it all from the quality of your observation, something opens. You begin to see that the power isn't in what you see, but in who is seeing. That understanding changes everything. Reality is no longer a closed system. It becomes a living mirror. And mirrors don't project, they reflect. So the true shift begins when you stop seeking solutions only outside and start observing yourself as you observe. When that switch flips, the world no longer needs to prove anything to you. It simply responds. The subtle mechanics of creation. Your attention as a vibrational command. There is a silent force constantly at work in the construction of your reality, and that force is your attention. Few people realize the true power behind what they choose to focus on each day. Attention seems simple, almost trivial, but in truth, it's one of the most powerful instruments of creation you possess. It works like a beam of energy that tells the universe what should take form, what should grow, what should repeat. Everything you observe with presence intensifies in the field, not because the universe plays favorites, but because it responds to the vibration your consciousness sustains. Attention is the vehicle that carries your frequency. It is the channel through which your energy flows, and wherever it touches, something begins to organize. Imagine your consciousness as a beam of light, and reality as a vast field of unmanifested possibilities. Every time you direct that light towards something, an idea, an emotion, an expectation, that part of the field begins to become denser, more real, more present. What was once only potential gains form. And what gains form eventually manifests in your practical life. But here's the most important detail. It's not only about where you place your attention, it's about how you sustain it. A fleeting thought may not carry much impact, but sustained attention, charged with emotion, becomes a vibrational command. Reality silently bends to that force. You've likely had moments where you thought intensely about something, and suddenly it started appearing in conversations and signs and coincidences. But it wasn't a coincidence. It was the field responding to your constant vibration. Likewise, repetitive thoughts of fear, doubt, or lack generate a dense resonance that attracts exactly matching situations. Not because you deserve it, but because the field interprets it as your request. And the request is not made with words. It's made with focus, frequency, and consistency. The subtle mechanics of creation don't depend on physical effort, but on vibrational clarity. What you observe with deep intention begins to become reality, even if still invisible to the eyes. Manifestation starts in the invisible, in the vibrational data you send to the field every day through your attention. But why is this so important? Because most people live in a scattered way. They observe everything but sustain nothing. They want abundance but focus on lack. They wish for peace but keep their attention on chaos. Without realizing it, they keep feeding realities they don't want, simply because they don't understand that where their attention is, there is their creative power. Every repeated thought, every insistent mental image, every emotion felt while observing a situation, all of this is like a silent request made to the universe. And the universe, always responding to vibration, returns it in the form of experience. So the most powerful question you can ask yourself is, where am I placing my attention right now? And with what energy am I sustaining that focus? When that question becomes a habit, your life begins to realign, because your attention is no longer random. It becomes a conscious tool of creation. And in that moment, you stop being someone who merely reacts to life and become someone who creates it. The role of emotion in observation. Feeling is what leads. To observe something is more than just seeing it with your eyes. It's immersing your consciousness into that object, situation, or thought. But what truly infuses creative power into observation isn't the gaze itself, it's the feeling behind the gaze. Emotion is the fuel of creation. It gives vibrational potency to what you're observing. Without it, attention is neutral. With it, observation becomes active co-creation. You've likely heard the saying, the universe doesn't respond to what you say, it responds to what you feel. And this is a fundamental truth. The language of the quantum field is not made of words, concepts, or logic. It's made of frequency, and emotion is the most direct way to transmit that frequency to the universe. When you observe something with anger, anxiety, or fear, you emit a specific vibrational signature. It doesn't matter if the words are positive or the mental intention seems pure. If the emotion behind the thought is constrictive, That's what the field registers. On the other hand, when you observe with gratitude, trust, or love, even in the face of something difficult, you radically shift the kind of reality that begins to take shape around it. Emotion, then, isn't a consequence of observation. It is its essence. The feeling you sustain while observing a situation determines the frequency being sent to the field. Emotion is the tone of your vibration, the energetic quality that colors your attention. And it's this tone that tells the universe how to interpret your focus. Two people can wish for the same thing, a new job or healing, for instance. But while one observes this desire with lightness and faith, the other observes it with frustration and desperation. The vibration they emit is completely different, and so are the realities they attract. The universe doesn't hear requests, it reads states of being. That's why so many people feel they're trying to manifest something but can't. Because the mind says, I want it, but the body vibrates, I don't have it. Emotion, more than any thought, is what activates or blocks creation. When there's a mismatch between what you think and what you feel, your vibration becomes incoherent, and the field responds to that incoherence with confusion, delays, and repetition. This brings us to a liberating truth. You can start changing your reality right now, not by changing what you want, but by changing the emotional state with which you observe what you want. To observe with lightness, with surrender, with trust, even without guarantees, is already a powerful way to shift your vibration. There's a huge difference between looking at life with fear that something might go wrong and looking at it with the feeling that everything is conspiring in your favor, even if the current scene doesn't reflect it yet. This difference isn't philosophical, it's vibrational. And this vibration defines what will be attracted, what will dissolve, and what will transform. Ultimately, the feeling with which you observe the world defines how the world responds to your presence. You're not just seeing, you're informing the field, every second, of what you want to experience. Not with words, but with emotion. And here's the good news. You can choose the tone of your vibration. You can train your body to feel what you haven't yet lived. And when you do, you begin to live what you've already learned to feel. Because in the game of creation, feeling is what leads. Why observing the problem only feeds the problem? There's an almost automatic impulse within us. When we notice a problem, the mind rushes to solve it. It does this by placing all its attention there, diving into what's wrong, trying to understand, control, and anticipate. The intention seems good, to resolve, but what few realize is that this kind of observation, when fueled by heavy emotions like fear, anxiety, or frustration, doesn't dissolve the problem. It amplifies it. Reality responds to the energy with which you observe it. This means that when you look at a situation through a contracted vibration, you are, unintentionally, reinforcing and sustaining that same frequency in the field. And the field doesn't distinguish between what you want and what you don't want. It only mirrors the dominant vibration. So by observing the problem with resistance, you're silently telling the universe, this is important, this is real, this needs to stay. This is where many get confused. They think they're solving something simply because they're thinking about it intensely. But what they're actually doing is keeping their consciousness entangled in the energetic field of the problem. They're feeding it with focus and emotion, the two basic ingredients of vibrational creation. When you try to change a situation from the same emotional state that created it, you're just spinning in circles. You're trying to put out a fire with vibrational gasoline. No matter how much effort you make, how many logical solutions you chase, or how often you talk about it, your frequency remains stuck in the same energy signature. And as we've seen, it's vibration that creates, not logic. Imagine someone trying to attract prosperity while checking their bank account in despair every day. The dominant vibration isn't abundance, it's lack. Even if the mind desires the opposite, the field registers the emotion behind the gaze. And that emotion says, I don't have, I'm lacking, I need. The result? The field returns more experiences that match that vibration. To observe the problem without vibrational awareness is like shouting to the universe, "Keep giving me more of this," and it obeys. But this doesn't mean ignoring what's wrong or pretending everything is okay. It means choosing how you position yourself internally in the face of what appears. It is possible to acknowledge a challenge without sinking energetically into it. It's possible to look at it with presence, but without fear. It's possible to observe with neutrality or even gratitude, knowing that what appears is there to be transcended, not fed. The key lies in the vibrational intention behind the observation. Are you looking to heal or to fear? Are you observing to release or to control? Are you holding the energy of trust or of resistance? The field responds to your vibration, not your mental effort. And when you learn to change the quality of your presence in front of a problem, something begins to shift. Silently. The problem loses strength, the pattern starts to dissolve, and reality, once dense and repetitive, begins to open to new possibilities. So whenever you find yourself trapped in a cycle of worry, repeat silently. Observing with fear sustains. Observing with presence transforms. The universe is listening to your vibration, and what you observe with faith, acceptance, and openness begins to reorganize. Changing the observer is more important than changing the situation. Most people spend their lives trying to change external circumstances, trying to control work, fix relationships, solve financial issues, organize the apparent chaos of the world. That impulse isn't wrong, it's human. But there's something few have been taught to notice. The situation doesn't need to change for reality to change. What needs to change is the observer. The vibrational field that organizes your life doesn't respond just to facts, but to the way you interpret, feel, and hold them in your consciousness. You, the observer, give meaning, shape, and direction to everything that happens. And when your internal state shifts, what you attract and perceive also begins to shift, even if externally everything still looks the same for a while. The conditioned mind believes it can only feel good once something out there changes. But awakened consciousness understands that the outside is just a reflection of the inside. So the most transformative movement isn't pushing the world to match your expectations, but aligning your energy to a new state of being. You've experienced this in subtle moments. Situations that once felt heavy or confusing suddenly felt lighter after an internal shift, an insight, acceptance, or emotional release. Even though nothing had been resolved outwardly. What changed? Your perception, your field, your center. And when the observer changes, reality begins to respond with new configurations. The quantum field doesn't react to verbal requests. It responds to the vibration of your being. And that vibration isn't what you say you want. It's what you truly are as you observe life. That's why so many people say nothing's changing, even though they're doing everything to improve, because they remain the same observer with the same emotions, the same judgments, the same vibrational pattern. To change the observer is to enter a different state of being. It's asking yourself sincerely, how would someone at peace see this right now? Or, how would the version of me who's already living my dream feel in this situation? These questions aren't just reflections. They're tools to access new frequencies. Picture a mirror. You can move all you want in front of it, but your reflection only truly changes when you change your expression, your posture, your presence. Reality works the same way. It reflects not your external effort, but your internal state. And once that state shifts, the reflection inevitably follows. This doesn't mean ignoring challenges or pretending everything is fine. It means realizing that your vibration is more decisive than your actions. Often, a small internal shift, from rush to trust, from fear to surrender, from anger to acceptance, can already redirect the entire course of a situation. Because the field isn't waiting for the world to change in order to respond. It's waiting for you to change the tone of your gaze, for you to become the version of yourself who can sustain the reality you want to live. Not as an abstract idea, but as a real, present, vibrant frequency. When you embody that new vibration, the world around you begins to reorganize. What once felt stuck or chaotic starts, almost magically, to open. Not by chance, but because the mirror began to reflect something new. And that's the great turning point. It's not about changing what's happening, it's about changing who's watching. The new reality begins to respond to the new observation. When you change the way you observe, something invisible begins to move. It may not be immediate to the eye, but it's immediate in the field. Because the universe doesn't wait for reality to shift in order to respond. It responds the moment your vibration shifts. And that response, though subtle at first, is the exact moment a new reality begins to take form. Every time you change the frequency with which you look at life, you start a new pattern of communication with the field around you. What once felt blocked begins to breathe. People you hadn't heard from reappear. Messages finally find their way to you. What was once silence begins pulsing with synchronicity. It's as if the universe had been waiting for you to shift the tone of your presence in order to deliver a reality aligned with your new state. Not because it's testing you, but because it functions through vibrational mirroring. Reality is a reflection, not an imposition, and reflections don't choose what to show. They simply return. Think of your life as a radio station. As long as you're tuned into the frequency of doubt, everything you receive will come through that bandwidth. Limiting thoughts, fearful events, signs that confirm your insecurity. But as you adjust the dial to a different frequency, trust, love, inner certainty, you begin picking up a different program. The opportunities change, the feelings shift. Even time seems to respond differently. This change isn't magical in the fantastical sense, but it's deeply quantum, because the field responds to your state of being, and that state is transmitted through everything you are in the moment of observation. Your intention, your emotion, your surrender. When those elements align, the field receives a new vibrational signal and begins to reorganize the external in harmony with the internal. You may not see the results right away, and that's where many give up. They return to the old way of seeing, and the field, obedient as ever, reflects the same reality back. But those who sustain the new vibration with consistency and faith begin to notice reality gradually softening, like a river that shifts its course with time. The signs begin to appear, a phrase that awakens you, a new idea, an unexpected invitation, a sense of lightness replacing old anxiety. You realize you're no longer pushing against reality. It's moving with you. It's beginning to cooperate, all because you changed how you see. It's important to remember, reality doesn't resist your transformation. It only waits for you to sustain the new. And when it feels that the inner shift is true, it begins to shape itself according to your new vibration. It clearly responds to the frequency you embody most consistently. This isn't about positive thinking to attract miracles. It's about observing the world as someone who already knows they are being guided, as someone who already feels that everything is part of a greater unfolding, as someone who knows the field doesn't fail, it simply reflects. The new reality doesn't arrive when everything changes outside. It begins the moment you change the way you look and remain in that new way, even before any sign appears. Because the universe always starts its response in the invisible. And when you trust that space, the visible finally transforms. You don't need to control the world. You don't need to force results or chase every answer. The key lies in how you observe. Because reality isn't a reflection of what happens. It's a reflection of the frequency with which you stand before what happens. When you observe with fear, the field contracts. When you observe with trust, it opens. Life responds with the exact tone of your vibration. In the coming days, practice this new gaze. Observe with awareness. Observe with lightness. Observe as someone who's already arrived at the place they want to be. Because the reality you desire doesn't arise from effort. It arises from the coherence between your inner state and the way you interact with the now. Everything responds. Everything mirrors. And now you know your observation is a portal. Change the observer, and the world changes with you.